So it's carrying on the atmospheric landscapes theme that I started last week, or we started last week. So last week was just a kind of general discussion. We just came up with a few ideas, and really, the general idea was that landscapes that are more atmospheric, it's to do with like weather effects, a mixture of weather effects and the lighting, really. So an interaction of those two tends to create something atmospheric. So I thought I'd have a go at this photo here. So this one I took quite a few years ago, just on the mud flats near where I live, early morning. I'm going to use watercolours, but I'll also perhaps use a bit of pastel as well. And I'm picking mediums that are fairly easy, if you did want to work outside, they're fairly easy to transport outdoors. I've got one more outdoor session to Malden. I think it's on the 21st, if anybody fancies that. But that'll be, I'll sort of leave it at that. So with this one, the sky I always find the hardest bit, really. And I might, I think the best thing to do would be to just dampen the paper. So it's watercolour paper, a nice big natural hair brush that holds lots of moisture. I'm just going to keep all this. In fact, it wouldn't do any harm to dampen everything, really. Just plenty of water. I particularly found, with having it vertical, the top seems to dry out quite quickly. I can just run down there. It's a good idea to pre-mix colours, so I'll then go to a slightly smaller brush, not too small. And the white, I want to keep white. All I've sketched in is the boat and a little bit of the hill. So I'm going to get these kind of yellowy colours at the bottom and blues at the top. So I think I'll actually start with the yellowy ones. So I think this is raw sienna I've got here. And because the page is so wet, that will dilute the colour a bit. And it wouldn't really do a lot of harm if it came down here as well. But I'll leave a gap here for the reflection. So some of that there. Just sorting that out. Lift bits out with a clean brush. And then the blues up at the top. So we're going to keep a lot of light here. This can be quite strong at the top. I'm using a slightly thicker mix of paint because this will soften out into the page anyway. Maybe a tiny bit lighter there, so a little bit more diluted, just to lighten that a bit more still. Not too much on. And then as I'm working down, this can become lighter still. I've just got to be careful not to introduce too much moisture though, otherwise it will just run everywhere. Soften that into here a little bit. I think with watercolours, a lot of it is just controlling the wetness of the paper, the wetness of the paint. These clouds here are going to go a lot greyer. I think this bit here wants to be slightly greyer as well. So maybe some of the blues and a little bit of red mixed in with that. Just try that.
Nice colours, aren't they?
Again, the paper's starting to dry out, so maybe I'll leave that. I'll just go in with the darks now. So again, it probably pays to make up a mix beforehand of all the colours, which I haven't done for everything. So I'm going to use some grey purple, maybe a little bit of the yellowy colour in as well. It's going to be quite, unfortunately that's starting to dry now, which wasn't what I wanted. It's dry very quickly, so just have to go in with that. Almost sort of like a dry, so that bit at the bottom's still wet, that's nice. So yeah, using more of a kind of dry brush technique. I was hoping that would stay wet, but it's not. So just soften that out, just using the side of the brush rather than the. This bit is a little bit wet still. So I've got a chance to work those put in. As it comes down, they get a little bit warmer, a little bit browner. Yeah, and that's quite nice. That's a little bit darker. Most of the colour out. Find a bit in the brush. That's probably about as good as I can get it. It's a very, for me, it's a very hit and miss sort of medium. I'd let all that dry, and then these bits could go in over the top. So this would want to go a lot greyer on the sides, sort of quite golden around here, but a little bit grey here. That bit, I think I'm going to have to just perhaps let that dry and add a bit of pastel once it's dry. So once it's dry, and the one I did this morning worked quite well.
That was just over by your bag, I think.
I might.
It was.
Oh no, yeah,
Oh,
it was.
you
I've moved it. Yeah.
yeah.
So that was the one I did this morning. So that was sort of happy castle here. So that worked quite well as a sky. What you can do is make alterations with the pastels, and I think pastels can be quite a nice, almost like an undercoat for watercolour. So this is one I did earlier in the week, which was. Is it?
Really
I'm
so
It's based on
I'm
that.
so impressed that for me this is just finished. This is
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
It's lovely.
When we went and did some painting at Hadley last week on Friday. It's just a little group, but it was really, we had this lovely view. That was kind of the view we had, sort of looking across the estuary from the Paddy Country Park. So I thought, well, it'd be nice to base it on
And you like that ball because it's like that you get such interesting different textures, don't you, from the watercolour?
Yeah. And it can be quite nice. I mean, I've added a bit of pastel to this, but you could just keep adding, changing. It's quite
And it seems to work well for a landscape, but also for an abstract piece of art as well.
Yeah.
Or an abstract.
So this is sort of maybe adding some stronger clouds in, that sort of thing. You could blend it in if you wanted to, or just use it and leave it in. Actually, yeah, that looks quite nice. It's kind of a mixture of watercolour and pastel, and it's slightly picking up the texture of the paper, which is quite nice. A little bit nice to work over the top. So that could be quite a nice combination. This sort of very bright area here. Kind of this would be difficult to do just watercolour on its own, but once you've got something in as a basis, you can then work in sort of a bit sort of sense of light coming through like that, or it could be rain or. So it's a nice way of modifying a watercolour. I think they're both quite tricky mediums on their own, but sometimes working together that you can get the best of both mediums.
So easy, no?
So easy.
So easy. You just have to-
you show it and you say, oh my god, but I think I can't.
I think it's,
It also looks to me like the way you've kind of seen the shape, gone for it, and then you leave it. It like not something that's like overworked, loads of lines, but you see a shape. You say that's all going to be that shape. Leave. You know?
Yeah. Sometimes it's nice to soften some bits out, and other bits just leave it as a nice strong brush mark. Really.
But the way you're not sort of like in a pernickety way, kind of, oh that line and that there. It's more sort of like this is the shape of all the
big
trees.
shapes and things like that. Yeah, this could go just a little bit darker, and then that might be quite nice and a bit textured. Yep.
The white clouds.
Yeah.
Do you prefer to just leave the canvas showing, or do you prefer to paint white?
With watercolours, I'd leave the paper showing. With oils or acrylics, I probably would paint them in. Yeah, so it depends what medium, really.
Okay.
Yeah. With this, I try if I can to leave it, but then sometimes just having it's easier to just put a few lines in as a highlight than to try and leave the spaces.
Because sometimes the paper looks whiter than
Yeah,
than actually the paint.
yeah, that's it. You've got a nice,
Paint,
yeah,
sort of
absolutely.
kind of yellowish.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why it's nice to kind of reserve the paper in some way, because it will always appear brighter than a white paint.
That pastel's even brighter in a way, isn't it, in the paper, or is it?
No, I don't think so.
Similar.
I think, yeah, that's white paper. I
No, you're
don't
right,
think-
it's a bit more.
It doesn't look too different. I'll put a little bit there. It's just like, if you come up really close in a minute, it's a tiny bit darker.
Yeah, actually, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
But it's just if you lose the page and you can get that again, but
yeah, you can sort of get a sense of it back. I mean, you could always put a little bit of white paint on, but the pastel's quite nice.
yeah.
So anyway, if you fancy trying any of that, there's pastels there, a bit of watercolour there if you want to use any of that.
Let's buy some pastels. I haven't got anything